Okay, so recording has started. The computer robot should have told you that. Thanks everyone for being here. It is 6:33 and I'm going to call the meeting to order. We have Sam, Javier, Brad, and myself present as board members, and then Paul and Jacqueline present as community members. So welcome. I would like, let's see. So the agenda for tonight is quite simple. There's only one kind of main action item on there. Would anyone like to motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Sam, seconded by Javier. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Didn't see Brad. Brad, any reason not to adopt? All right, we'll take that as 5-1 with abstention, or 5-0-1. All right, so agenda is confirmed. So I guess before we get into talking about our district's budget memo, does anyone have any non-agenda public comment? All right. So if anything does come up, we'll probably have some time after we discuss budget as well. So feel free to chime in, and we can, also take notes for anything we want to discuss at the next meeting. Okay, so let's see. I guess last time we met, we had talked about the draft budget memo as it related to capital improvement projects, and drafted, I think it was our top 5 or 6 kind of prior Peninsula. I was unable to attend the last full board meeting and haven't checked the minutes. Did that end up passing through?
Yes, the all 6 items that we recommended went through as our priorities.
Okay, great. So then we had discussed resuming the conversation today to discuss some smaller ticket items, things that wouldn't necessarily meet the capital improvement project kind of threshold. And so with that, I wanted to open it up. Does anyone, hopefully you've had time to look at it. I can screen share the budget memo if that would be helpful, or we can just kind of launch into it if folks have ideas.
Yeah, what did come up in that meeting, I did mention that we were going to get back together with the subcommittee, and that we were going to touch on some of the service items that were in the memo that were not non-capital projects also. So and there was a real strong desire by the committee to include and point out the importance of the street sweeping program and make sure that we touched on that. So I just wanted to bring that up. I know it was brought up more than once, and I made a commitment that we would talk about it here. So just want to bring that up.
Okay, great. And so I guess before we kind of talk more about that, were there any other services that we want to kind of add to that list?
I recall that we talked about, and I was going to bring it back up. We had a slight discussion about under the public safety. One of the items that I thought we could add was a Point Loma emergency response. It would be sort of develop a medical and disaster emergency plan through the Office of Emergency Services for the Point Loma community.
Yeah, that sounds prudent.
Yeah, I would think that's a very good addition. I was kind of disappointed in the public safety section, as it kind of just got down to the beach area, and that seemed to be where it was. There was no specifics about SD, PD recruitment objectives, no increase public, no comments about the salary or specific information. So overall, there's more specifics about the beach area, the beach needs, which are fine because we do want to be able to protect people at the beach. So from that standpoint, that was kind of my comment on this.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see.
Matt, can I speak?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I just reviewed this portal of the CIPs, and I find that there's all the different preliminary engineering, design, post, and construction and post. There's only one undergrounding project on the entire list for District 2, and I'm not sure if there's something missing. But of course, it's not in our area; it's over in Claremont. So Claremont Mesa Road Improvement, blah, 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 block 6 DD1. I don't know whatever happened to the program, but like my street was about 6 years in and then it got changed and it's way down the line now. So I'm not sure what's happened to the priority of undergrounding utilities here. I know it's taken a lot longer or double the time that they originally planned, and it's the same price at twice the distance. So, or it'll be twice as much, I guess, but it seems like we might be getting shortchanged. I'm not sure where it stands.
I support that. That's a good point, Paul. Yeah, I'm surprised that there's nothing on the radar because there is a priority set. So
I know you can look up on the city's website and you can pull down and look at all of the, by a map. And I did look at some of the places in like Ocean Beach or wherever. And it was things like, this one's been approved and it's been funded, but it won't be constructed for like 6 years or something. And there were 4 or 5 categories. And like the category that my area is in is totally off the radar. It's probably like 15 years out and it's still listed in one of the top, or maybe the top half of all districts that are going, and it's going to take forever to get this done. So I don't know what that means. I know that there's a limited funding that everybody's paying for, but I'd kind of like to know what the process is and how many miles are they doing? Some kind of update from the city to see if they're tracking along to anywhere near what they were supposed to be doing.
That makes sense. Particularly if you had this former timeline and now, don't even see, kind of your area on there. Do you think this is something that we want to include in this kind of general priorities letter, or do you think your concern might be better served by something that's specific just to that?
Well, it's hard to say, according to the CIP thing here, it's on the list. It is on the list. So if that's what we're going off of, but maybe you're better off to go, as you say, separately to get maybe an update on where we are and as to whether streets have been skipped or has there been any additional changes. I mean, I actually worked for a councilman back in the 90s or something when they put this thing in. And when he left office, the next person came in and redid all the assignments were changed. So a lot of people were bumped down quite a bit. And not maybe too unsurprising, the chief of staff for the new person had his on the top of the list. I'm not going to say anything, but
And Paul, I agree with you. I've been here 25 years and my neighbor works for SDG&E and he doesn't understand why we haven't seen any progress at all. At least I'm on the north side of Ocean Beach and we're not seeing anything going underground.
Yeah.
Exactly. I just checked the map. Sorry to interrupt anybody. I just checked the map for my house, and in years 15, 20 years ago, whatever, I looked and I was supposed to be undergrounded here. I live up by Silvergate, and I was supposed to be undergrounded something like 2033. And now it just says unallocated. It's not even
really
on it. Yeah. It just dropped off. So yeah, everybody's points are well taken. Yeah, I thought SDG&E was going to do it, but yeah, who's got the answers? So yeah, so is that what you were asking, Matt? Should we at least, I mean, is that even a budgetary thing?
Yeah, I think we can take it one of two ways. We could just, try to add it to the list as like, we want to see this as a priority, or we could try to follow up because it sounds like Paul was suggesting we try to ask for an update from the city to find
Right.
out, because it sounds like some of these things, the money is allocated, like well years in advance before it actually gets implemented for an area. So it might be that, there's something already in the pipeline that we're just not aware of. So yeah, I guess, I have it on my, kind of list now. Maybe this is something we can come back to and see, kind of later in the evening, how many items we have on this list. And if, it makes sense to add it at that point, we can. Otherwise, we may separate it, because if we're hoping for a response from the city, adding it to, a multi-line item list may not be the best way to solicit that.
Oh, my only comment on that would be that if you look at the councilman's letter about budget priorities, about 2/3 of them were in Claremont, I believe, in that area, and there was very few over here. So maybe we do need to add some more to maybe get some kind of response.
So that is a good point. And I think we're already starting that with what we did last time in terms of the big CIP priorities, which this would probably fall under as well. And I think just for some context, the city kind of moved earlier its deadline for releasing this first draft of the memo. As a planning board, we were caught a little unaware and weren't able to get a larger, more comprehensive set of suggestions in before this draft was due. So I think that may be part of the reason Peninsula might be underrepresented compared to some of the other communities at this stage, because we hadn't really weighed in to give them some ideas. So my understanding and hope now is that we're trying to play a little bit of catch up. Then when they get to the next revision of this, there might be more things for our communities. We've been able to try to put them on their radar.
Go ahead, Javier.
Yeah, Matt, I'm kind of hedging towards the latter suggestion to really spend some time and put together a separate memo on this, because it's not really a funding item. There's plenty of funding that every month on our bill, we pay for this through our SDG&E bill. The problem is the prioritization and the execution. The city has been behind, and actually SDG&E was behind for years and years, and the city took it over, and the city hasn't been able to do it any quicker. So it would be good to get a real update and try to understand where the priorities are, because it was reprioritized about 5-8 years ago. The city hired a consultant, tried to expedite these, reprioritize. So I think it is worth probably a separate memo on this topic.
Okay.
I would like to second that, especially since I think our areas are getting somewhat ignored in this issue, on this issue, sorry.
Yeah, I'm looking at that map, and it's color coded.
Brett, would you be able to drop a link to that map in the chat?
I can do that.
Thank you.
There you
Can
go.
put it up on your screen.
Actually, I can't. I'm on a different computer. If someone else could do it, I'd appreciate it.
Let's see if I can. Let me see if I can.
The one thing I'm noticing is if you look at it, the brown areas are unallocated, and there's more unallocated than there is allocated.
That's for sure.
What's maybe a potential concern for our area is if it would get involved with that new procedure that they're doing, which would be for quote equity, to give funds to other areas. And I wonder if they would be hopscotching over to put these into an area in mid-city, let's say, because they're not as
Is that
affluent.
a city priority that you're describing, or is that an SDG&E one?
No, that's a city priority where they were going to not provide funds equally over council districts, but they were going to move them
Right.
by some kind of equity, giving some people more because they think they were didn't have stuff before and would skip over or push back the more affluent areas. And I just wonder if this would be involved in that, if the city's running it, and the city council is probably the group that makes the adjustments to it when they do, and I don't think it's very often, that where we might get cut out of it. Even the point here, most of the point is brown. A large degree of it is brown.
Looks like a lot of La Playa, wooded areas, Sunset Cliffs are allocated and should be soon, right? The yellow, Paul?
Yes, and I see that if you go over and look, if you put your clicker over, you'll see that some of these down on La Playa 01 up against the water there, that small piece, well, actually it goes across Rosecrans too. It's allocated in 2019.
Right.
And that's 3 years ago. Then we got, when you come up the hill, the next one's 2020.
Yeah, I saw some 21s too.
2018. My area is the 2022, which is the latest that I see of anything that's allocated.
Right.
So, and all the brown ones are totally unallocated, and I don't know, they're probably in some kind of, number. They're in line behind each other, I would assume, but they don't show you that on the map here.
The blues are on the most of these main collectors and stuff. Those are already done.
I believe those are done. Those are, what was it called? Title. There was something where they had to underground the main streets for views.
Yeah,
that was done
yeah.
years
It
ago.
looks like
Rosecrans was
Nimitz,
done about 30
Voltaire,
years ago.
Catalina.
Yeah, even Santa Barbara, I think, was done.
Yeah,
under
Santa
that.
Barbara. Yeah, there's a little
years
section.
ago.
Right, exactly.
You've got it on
And
looks like
Chatsworth.
Sunset Cliffs for a portion of it, and they were
Yeah.
just doing some of Sunset Cliffs down there. South
Hill
of,
Street and Talbot, both.
Talbot, yeah.
Did
Talbot
you
Hill,
guys
yeah,
get
Hill
that
Talbot.
link I sent?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you,
yes,
Brad.
thank you, Brad.
Mhm,
Okay,
yes.
I just wanted to check. So you guys, everybody knows what we're talking about?
Yep. It looks
Oh.
sad for us.
Right, right.
So I think the blue ones maybe are not in the program, I assume. For some reason, like over by the sports arena, it's mostly all blue there. Well, part of it on the other side of Kurt Street's brown. So the blue areas, I think, are maybe they're already completed. If you went up to like Rancho Bernardi, there's nobody who's not undergrounded there. And fortunately, we got this thing passed because they're paying for us to be undergrounded at some point.
Okay, so if we want to kind of make this its own thing, do we want to spend time this evening doing that, or do we want to table this for now and pick it up at our next meeting as an action item? And that might also give us a little time. If anyone has contacts in the city, they might want to reach out and see if they can get any insight to bring before our next meeting.
That seems prudent. That's a good idea.
That's fine with me.
Okay, cool. So let's table that for now, and that'll be one of the items I'll start for the agenda for February meeting. Sound good?
Yes, I'll just mention one more thing. Down here in what's called Azure Vista, there's orange down there.
Yeah.
And it says that it was allocated in 2016. The design was for 2018 to 2020, and the construction is 2027. So, I mean, you're talking like it'll be 11 years from the allocation to when there'll be construction, and that'll probably slip.
And how can they budget for that? I mean, it just makes no sense.
I don't know. Is it because they don't have enough manpower, or that they have the funding is metered out, that they can only do so much at a time? Or is it because they have not enough crews. I can't imagine, you would think it would be funding.
But if the money, I mean, we had a
The money,
surplus.
no, the money's there.
Yeah, money's there.
They can't spend it. They can't do
Well,
the design
I-
quick enough because
I do remember when they started the program, that I believe they said it was going to be something like a 20-year program to get everybody done, or it might have been 15. But
50 years.
I remember what it was. After they were 1 year in, they said, this is taking twice as long. So basically it's a 30-year program. And that was about 20 years ago when it started.
Well,
I
I mean, you know, just in having seen it, some of these projects go through, like when on some of these main collector streets and such, you know, they'll put phone lines down and fill it in, and then they'll dig it back up and they'll put cable down and fill it back in, and then they'll open it back up and they'll put the electrical down. You know, when I've gone to other countries, like let's say Japan, they just have sort of like a concrete conduit and everything is in it, and they just put big pieces of concrete down as a cap, and everything just runs through that. It just, I mean, I don't understand this digging stuff up and burying it again as they pass the buck off to other people. You know, because if you're trying to take down the pole, everything that's on the pole, but they're all private parties. So is it cable and telephone that are impeding?
Well, it's three things. It's electric, cable, and phone lines.
Right.
And so
That's what I
Cox is
mean.
up there on most of them, and electricity and Bell. And like in my yard, I have the Bell stuff running behind me. So I don't know if they'll ever do that. It doesn't bother me that much. Up front it does. I mean, I go down a block from here, they got wires hanging off,
Everywhere.
like in circles, hanging off the poles. 3 or 4 circles, you know, huge things hanging there. It's just ugly. And
Yeah. Well, maybe that's the kind of information that we would get if we, as Matt says, you know, maybe we can reach out to somebody who will at least know something. We could try the council person's office.
the other kind of pet peeve I had was that there's a lot of places, and you know, I don't know if anyone lives in them, but let's say down in the Silvergate area where they're all in the alleys. So
Yeah, that's
so
me.
we're funding possibly stuff in an alley before we're fixing streets. And a lot of times those alleys aren't very well, aren't used. They're kind of utilitarian anyways. But you know, what can you do?
Mine's easy. It's dirt.
Yeah,
Well, it'll be dirt forever.
well, it'd probably be easier to do an alley.
Yeah, it was pretty easy
I
when they
know
did the
when
laterals
it
there.
started that one of the priorities when I was in the city council office of Byron Ware, and he wanted to do a Mission Beach. And they started looking at it and they saw how expensive it was going to be with all of those lines, all of those units, and, you know, in those alleys, there's water table, and they just, I think, kind of blew it off, at least for them. And now it looks like that one's allocated for 2016 and no construction yet. And this was like in 19, maybe 97. So we're talking 30 years.
Well, we'll get it done for our kids. Sorry, it's kind of.
Grandkids.
Yeah.
My
Perfect.
kids are grown now and we haven't
Yeah,
seen it.
so is mine, but
Actually, there are
I'm
some in
not a
Mission Beach that are
grandfather
being
yet.
done right now. The lower half of Mission Beach, just north of the roller coaster, is in the, you know, one of the phases and not construction phase yet.
Just to clarify, does the blue mean it's been done or it's not an area that's going to be done?
I
Are
think
you-
dark blue is done.
Oh,
It's
the dark
done.
blue, the kind of a teal color.
Well, the Midway District has that color blue, so I was curious.
I'll click on that. Okay, it says it's completed.
Huh,
Sports
because now
Arena
you're gonna,
Boulevard is completed. So blue
But
must
the-
be, that kind of grayish blue must be completed. If you see the teal up there, it means it's in like a, that's in the design phase. And then the brown is unallocated and the yellow is, you know, allocated, and the orange is moving, it's in the design phase, I guess. Project development.
Matt, one thing
Yes.
I was noticing as far as services, our parks in the maintenance, I mean, everything looks like dirt and weeds now. It's looks attractive. Is there going to be anything allocated to us on maintaining the parks that we have?
I was just looking over that section. Jacqueline, have you seen the budget memo?
Yeah, I was trying to find where
Okay.
that was, under what section, and I saw
Yeah.
that there was the Sunset Cliffs with the potholes, but I didn't see anything else about other parks.
So I think the only one in our Peninsula community was for the Canyon Street Pocket Park.
Mhm.
There's, under Park and Recreation Center improvements, what is this? I guess this is page 12 of the memo. They list out some specific ones for parks,
Okay.
but then also there's, kind of general items, such as, what is it? Like public restroom maintenance, that
Mhm.
isn't specified to a particular community.
Okay.
So I think there's a couple things like that, but I think this is a good area where if you have specific recommendations, like are there any specific parks or specific services? So you just mentioned
Robb Field is a mess. I mean, when you drive just coming up Nimitz and where the dog park is now,
Mhm.
that whole corridor, it's just dirt, it's ugly, there's nothing, put some succulents, make it look appealing if you're not going to have grass back there again. It's just, they look dead, tired.
Sure. That makes sense. Can anyone remind me, is that part actually in our Peninsula jurisdiction, or is that segment part of Mission?
So
Bay?
it's Nimitz and Sunset Cliffs, is
Yeah,
that
I'm
Robb
just wondering if
Field?
that's OB or not, because I
Yeah.
think we don't
Oh,
don't we
you're
Probably
right.
stop,
OB.
I think we stop at Nimitz and West Point Loma.
Okay,
But I think what we could do, because they have some of these general priorities, what we could say is something related to landscaping or vegetation.
Mhm.
Do you have, let's see, how could we word that?
Those, and then the trees that are actually dying, and I mean, literally, because they're not
Yeah.
being watered, they're just doing a crappy job of cleaning it up, and it just, you get these ugly stumps. I mean, it just,
Do we have any idea? I mean, we know that COVID threw a wrench in a lot of things, but I mean, is the city just understaffed and they just, everybody quit and went someplace? I mean, do we just, because I mean, in talking to about, getting some of these, flashing beacons and all that stuff done, and talking to somebody at the city, one of the senior traffic engineers, this was a year during COVID. And he was talking about, and I think I've mentioned it in the past, that effectively there's one crew of electricians with the city. And that's it. And that's why they can't get anything built, because those people are doing maintenance. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, is it just a staffing issue because they're just not enough people to do the work?
I saw the other day that somewhere on something I was following, and someone said, don't send any get it dones in today. We only have 4 people working here. Now, I don't know if that's a lot or not, but I found that app has really gone downhill, in my opinion, from what it was about 6 or 7 years ago. As far as I'm getting back to, you hardly ever get much of a response of details of what they're responding to. And also, like you're saying, that I believe the streetlights is where the electrician thing came in. They were talking about getting streetlights fixed on one of the streets over by Poinsettia that it needs the resurfacing that we were talking about last time, and also over by the high school where they have the streets in the middle of the block, or the middle of the intersection where that one got hit the other day. They probably didn't have a light on.
Right. Yeah, so maybe we can find out, why is city services so non-existent?
Okay,
I'd like to.
I mean,
I'd
I
like to
don't,
add
I
one
mean,
more.
we're just trying to figure things out here. I don't know how this really pertains to what we're supposed to be providing the board, but it is
I'd like to
frustrating.
add one more thing on it if I could is, I notice, I'm not a bike rider. I see a lot of bike routes, a lot of them aren't fully used, okay? But they have trees hanging down into them. They have debris in them. They have branches sticking into it. I was over, I think it was on Nimitz, where they just installed those posts along Nimitz Boulevard. And you drive by there and there's a sign that says cycle track, but the word is kind of like blocked by the tree that's in the way. Now you wonder, why didn't they take care of that when they installed it? And there seems to be no maintenance along Canyon Street going up, same thing. Number of places where, besides the debris being there, and they should have street cleaning done more often, especially on a bike route that of course now we have the posts create a problem with getting a cleaner in there. But we need some maintenance and.
yeah, the vegetation there is a real concern because like I commute almost daily on that Nimitz corridor, and I've submitted the get it done request to like, oh hey, it's not like full on landslide, but we have dirt and now vegetation in the bike lane, and with the bollards, it's not like it's easy to weave into the travel lane. Not that I want to do that, but yeah. So this is definitely a concern. I think we could include that. By asking the city to allocate, funding for this problem, because it seems like right now it's only kind of reactive to get it done, or maybe there's an annual cycle, but there's definitely more places like you've mentioned, Paul, and like lately on West Point Loma Boulevard too, particularly when you're crossing near, it's let's see, in between the like CVS shopping center and that liquor store, there's like trees that hang down that I'm having to duck. So I think we could include that too. I think, yeah, that would be a different item than say like the vegetation and landscaping for parks. This would be for, it could almost go in with like street sweeping program. And I wanted to come back and ask for a little clarification follow-up on that. When we're talking about street sweeping program, I think in the past, there's been concern about, there's been concerns voiced about a lack of signage and communication for street sweeping schedules. Is this part of the concern that we were wanting to take up, or was it around like getting more street sweeping services?
I think it's a combination, but one of them was Corla brought this up at one of the meetings, and I guess with the council member when she was speaking before the election. And I did some looking. There's where you can look at all the streets on a map. Interactive map, and supposedly she said that they were redoing the street sweeping cycle. It turns out they're not changing anything in the peninsula at all. You could go look and all the streets, if you click on them, they say no change anticipated. They're running on 7-year-old or 8-year-old now routes for these places, and they were apparently going to take one route and change the day of it, like only a few streets, which doesn't make sense. You look over at PB and almost all of the streets are signed over there, and they get every month service at a minimum. We're getting every other month service at best. And if cars are parked out there, they're going right around you. There's streets like Barnard and those ones down on Warden Street, they're always packed with cars, and they come down the street and they must just every other month, and can't do anything. So the drivers are probably not complaining because they're getting their job done quicker. It's just a shame. And to go back to the bike routes, I think there are more bike routes going in, and I think that this is going to become a bigger problem, especially when the posts are put in, because they need to get to those streets, and the sweepers, the normal ones, don't go in there. I guess they bought.
Well, the city has they've made at least 1 or 2 press releases about acquisition of electric street sweepers that fit in those bike lane things. So whether they have the resources to efficiently allocate them, I don't know, but they've at least put some thought into how they're going to maintain those.
They had a naming contest for one
Yes.
of those.
That's right. So yes, they're at least publicizing this, if not actually practicing it.
Right, right.
And
A
so
couple-
with in mind that I think we lose briefly here. I want to bring up just the kind of draft list I have. I'm going to share screen on this so we can discuss whether there's anything else we would want to add. And if, let's see, okay. And if we're pretty much okay with these, so the top of the list here that I've just highlighted are things we've discussed this evening. Below are a couple things that I copied straight out of the budget memo that we haven't discussed, but I feel like would be good priorities for the peninsula, and I'm happy to discuss them further if folks are interested. But so this is basically kind of the working rough draft I have of items so far. And so, you know, kind of broken up into service items for street sweeping, where we want to, you know, kind of increase or update the signage. And then that kind of goes with what Paul was just describing as in comparison to, say, Pacific Beach, where they seem to have a frequency of at least, you know, every month, you know, once a month minimum for streets. If I'm not mistaken, Paul was kind of proposing something similar.
Well, I was proposing that they do an analysis that they said they would do. I would assume that what they would do is they would go down, get something, go through Google Earth or something and find out how many cars are in each street. And if the street is fully taken up all the time, if it has more than half of the cars taken, then it probably should be signed or we don't do it at all. It's just crazy to come down and go down a street that's fully packed. And then the other streets are only once every 2 months. They used to be once a month until, I don't know, 20 years ago, and they dropped them back to every other month. You know, we're paying for this via water bills because it was moved over to the Water Enterprise Fund so that they could fund it outside of taxes. So we're paying, everybody who buys water and sewer is paying to have the street sweepers out there. And they also are getting paid by the tickets that they put out. So if you're talking about where it says signage, you may want to install, you know, which I guess maybe they'll understand means that there would be parking restrictions and there'd be ticketing to make sure that the street is cleanable.
Okay, so now we've revised that into, you know, increase or update the signage to ensure streets are, you know, so it's communicated such that streets can be more readily sweepable or cleanable. And then also request that they analyze whether frequency of sweeping should increase, or let's say whether frequency of sweeping is optimized. Okay, so then we also talked about in terms of kind of street maintenance, the vegetation encroaching on bike lanes, and there's a couple examples we can point to here. Then also in terms of public safety, the Point Loma Emergency Response Plan, you know, requesting that the Department of Emergency Services drafts a plan for the Point Loma community. Javier, do I understand correctly? We currently do not have a plan?
I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but
Okay.
Between now and when it comes to the committee, I'll try to research that and see if there is one. But I don't think there is. I don't think there is.
Okay. Cool. And then also under services, parks maintenance, particularly with an eye towards vegetation and landscaping, such as increased funding for watering trees and, you know, succulent replacements of grass, you know, citing the example that Jacqueline shared, even though it's not necessarily in our community, it's, you know, on our border, and it, I think, helps sell the idea with the concrete example. If anyone has an example that's even more in our domain, feel free to share, but this is kind of the idea for the moment.
That
And
is
then-
a good example.
Yeah, I think Jacqueline did a good job of explaining that as,
Yeah. I certainly support it.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have noticed it also.
There are some beach stairs that need to be installed, but I don't know if they're in our district group, our area or not.
Yeah, all the ones I saw, there were like Coronado and Bermuda and all
Bermuda.
that. Yeah, that seems to be OB. I couldn't, I called the city about that when they tore it down. And I remember talking to somebody at the city, and how long ago did they tear it down? 10 years ago? I said, how can you tear down stairs if you don't have a plan to rebuild them? So, I said, everybody in the community goes down to this little beach all the time. And so the community hasn't had that beach for a decade. I'm laughing, but it's sad. I don't get it.
Sometimes laughter is the best, if not healthiest response. I support you there, Brad.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, I need to check out, but I've been really impressed with the list so far, and I support it. And Matt, once again, great job. In 45 minutes, I think we've done a great job
I know.
getting this together. Look at that. I think it's all great points. So thanks, everybody. I apologize. I do have to leave. We've got some family stuff to take care of this evening.
No worries. Thank you for joining as you could.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Bye,
Take care,
guys.
Javier.
All right.
Bye.
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 Also under the Point Loma street improvements, I would actually like to add at the bottom of that list, Evergreen between Canyon and Talbot. That area has had so much construction on the uphill side that it's like one patch after another patch. And, I'm surprised that none of the residents, maybe they're all relatively new, that they haven't complained, but I drive that almost every day, and it's really a bad situation.
Yeah, that's also part of my regular bike commute, and I would appreciate seeing that also resurfaced. But I'm very pleased to see Oleander on here, because I know that's been a community concern that's been brought to the board, and particularly the transportation committee multiple times. So to see it, these items were copied directly. Trying to highlight it here. These items were copied directly out of what was already in the budget memo. So I was very pleased to see that, and I threw them on here because I was hoping that as a board, we want to reaffirm that these are priorities, and we want to see these, as presumably when the city budget analyst comes back with the cost of these things, some items are going to have to drop off the budget list. So if we can push to try to keep them on there, I think that would be good.
There's also that one section of Warden Street between Bob and Valletta. Right there, all that whole long section where the tennis club apartments are. And I was noticing the other day that the street there is just, I'd be concerned if a street sweeper went down that it wouldn't just start picking up chunks of the asphalt. It's just degraded. It's shot.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that's true. And that's close over to Barnard Street too. So
Yeah. That they connect effectively, don't they? Let me see.
You have to go down Bob Street, I think it is. For
Yeah.
half a block.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Barnard is horrible along that one section from Bob up there to the new apartments or whatever they're getting built over there towards Barron's.
Yeah, where the gas station was.
Yeah, that's awful.
That's real bad, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that part of the developer that he's going to be responsible for fixing that one close to, are they?
I don't think so, but I think I had heard if you go down Barnard Street, that you'll see that there's double sets of street lights there right next to each other. And I think that someone said, I don't know who, but that they may be waiting for that to get completed and have those torn out before they redo the street. I don't know,
Okay.
maybe that's just a guess of mine or something, but you'll see two posts right next to each other. And they haven't removed the old ones.
All right.
Do we have any other streets that we would want to potentially add to this list?
Formosa Street they rub the double yellow line off to move it over for bike lanes. And your left tire is driving right over the top of it, and it's kind of bumpy. It's not chuck holes, but it's kind of like they went in there and erased it with I don't know, some kind of
Oh, yeah,
grinding machine.
right.
And it really bothers you a little bit when you're going along there.
Oh, but
And you're going, well, do I want to go further over and encroach right onto the buffer line, or?
is that one of the ones that's up for resurfacing?
Well, that was the
Well-
one they painted with the bike lanes and the diagonal parking about like 4 years ago.
Well,
And-
we talked about them, all the modifications that you suggested that time. You remember that, Paul, when that little one parking space is
Yeah.
still there and everything
Right, that
still
whole
hasn't
area,
been,
uh-huh.
yeah, that it's like that, our request fell on deaf ears on that one. Yeah, nothing ever got done. I'm just wondering, and I've mentioned this in the past, it's just that we have so many letters and so many things that we've asked to have done. And it's like, for whatever reason, I don't know why they don't go on these budget lists. And it's almost like, why don't they just get added to the list until they get completed and stay there? And, I don't know, maybe I'm just grasping at straws, but I don't understand the point sometime of these letters that we send out. It's sort of like, yelling into a vacuum. Frustrating.
So I don't think this is a section of Leda that Paul was talking about, but some of it's up for design this year. This is the part over by Correa.
Those are all, yeah, that's not in the area. I'm talking about going to the right where your arrow is, over inside that bluish box. And then
Yeah.
above that is where Bernard Street is. And I don't know what the blue represents. Maybe does that represent resurfacing?
Yeah, but blue are the ones that are recent. I think
Slurry
orange
coat. Slurry.
orange are the ones that are up for consideration.
It says slurry seal.
Yeah, slurry seal.
So some of these roads, you can't put slurry seal on a road you can't even drive on.
Yeah, some of them just need to be completely done.
And some of those I think are done. I mean, Nimitz over here has been completed.
Yeah.
With that big Y shape, there are those arrows coming in, the entrance ramps.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I guess, or not this.
How is that for you? Just sorry to divert. How is that section of Nimitz that's been done? Did you feel a little bit better, Matt? Because you probably use that section, right?
Yeah, in general I do, and it was nice. I went on a date with Christina not long ago where we were able to bike side by side along Nimitz there while heading to the restaurant, and that's very pleasant. Cars are still going by faster than is posted speed limit, but it is definitely an improvement.
Right. Yeah, it certainly looks like it. And also by having those bollards there, if you're going northbound towards West Point Loma, past the bridge where the traffic would back up and everybody used to pull over and drive down the bike lane. Now that you can't do that anymore, which I actually was happy to see, because that certainly can be as you probably have experienced, a hair-raising thing.
Yeah, it's if I'm solidly in the bike lane, it's mostly a concern of like if a car is just going to decide to pull into it, suddenly.
Right.
And so it feels like the chance of that is greatly reduced now. So I'm
Right.
very grateful for how that road feels now compared to how it was.
Excellent.
And so I guess kind of on that note, if we could then bring it to these last two things I had copied from the budget memo as well for traffic safety items with specific regard to pedestrian and bicycle. The two things that are kind of in our Peninsula community that were already on the list were ones we've talked about before. The intersection improvements at westbound Sports Arena Boulevard and West Point Loma Boulevard, where basically the what's 2 travel lanes plus a bike lane disappears if you cross the intersection, and then it creates this forced merge where bicyclists either has to go into the crosswalk or into the travel lane with cars. And then West Mission Bay Drive, the bridge connections, where the new bridges are now open. There's still difficulty getting pedestrians and bicyclists safety across the on-ramps to I-8. And so, asking the city to allocate money to designing and implementing better treatment for that.
And do you happen to know if the bike lanes are directional?
On the bridges or
Yes.
where?
Well, there's 2 big, huge bike lanes, or there will be eventually. I walked across the new one and it's really wide. And I was wondering if bikes can go both directions on both bridges or not. Or are they going to have a line that you want to go like northbound on the northbound bridge and southbound on the southbound bridge or something?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer. I mean, it looks like I've also biked on the new one, and it looks like it's wide enough to accommodate both direction. And since there's ability to connect on both the north and the south side of the river from those bridges to the river bike paths, it seems like it would give you an option to get off and go either direction without dumping people onto Sports Arena.
Yeah, that makes sense. You could go from one side of the river to the other without having to go underneath and looping around 2 times. That makes sense. I did see that it seems like the bike and pedestrian lane coming on the new side goes up, and there's a wall and all that, and it appears to be as safe as I think they can make it without like a bridge over the top of the entrance ramp. I don't know what that's a heavily used double right turn lane onto the 8 there.
Right, and so I think the concern is, with just flashing lights to try to cross a double, free right turn. In conversations with Caltrans, there have been, proposals kind of going back and forth for things like, like an actual crosswalk that could, give a green light to pedestrians and cyclists to cross. That could actually stop traffic as opposed to just the yellow flashing lights, which, as far as I can tell, is the best the city's offering for now.
I almost saw a kid get hit the other day on Chatsworth. Someone wanted to get by real fast and the light's blinking, the kid's crossing the street, and I'm thinking, oh, what are these people thinking? There's no respect. I hate to see the lack of respect for our rules. Like you were saying, the speeding going down Nimitz is scary sometimes.
I was driving down Point Loma Avenue from Canyon up. Actually, I was going down from Catalina to Canyon. I was going to make a left turn. So there's a car coming the other way. And, so I kind of stopped and started to make a left turn. And the guy just blew right through the sign. He's going like 25 and he's throwing his hands up like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
He didn't even put his brakes on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in most of these situations, it would probably cost a driver 5-10 seconds. And, it's, that versus potentially someone's life and livelihood. Like it's insane. And,
Insane.
I could, have a whole conversation about just this, but we're going to lose Sam in a few minutes here. So in terms of trying to kind of wrap this up for this evening, how do we feel about the items that are on this list? Are these all ones that we would want to support? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I was going to make a motion. I just wanted to say that I think all the items I've gone through a second time, and I would support all of them. I think it's some very good additions over what was on the original document. So I would move that we actually put this together as at least the first page of our output for, you know, when we take this to the full board.
Cool, yeah, and so if we're gonna make a motion on it, we can motion for these items, and then I'm happy to, you know, like formalize the wording so it reads more like a real letter with bulleted items.
Yeah, that's fine. That'd be good.
Cool, Paul, did you have your hand raised?
Oh, I was just agreeing that I think it should go, and I'm happy to, if I can second it, to second it, or whatever.
Okay, so what was, I guess, Sam, were you motioning to vote approve on that letter?
Yes.
Okay, and then Paul seconds. All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. So it passes. Thank you.
Great job, Matt. Thanks so much for keeping
job.
everybody on track, and sorry to, you're just, I apologize for just making the meeting go longer.
No, I mean, these are all topical to, you know, what we're here to discuss. I'm grateful that everyone's able to come and provide input.
Well, thank you for everybody's time. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jacqueline.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah,
care.
yeah,
All
thank
right,
you.
Take you.
All right,
All right,
so
everybody.
7:30
Okay.
and meeting's adjourned.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
See you next
Bye-bye.
week. Bye.